Hi everybody, welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Forum's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate, sponsored by Turfway Park, where we're going to have one major Kentucky Derby prep. It is the Grade 3 Jeff Ruby Stakes, going 1 1/8 on the poly track. We'll also cover the Grade 2 Rebel Stakes, and DRF handicappers Matt Bernier, Mike Beer, and I will also take a peek at the lone Grade 1 this weekend, the Santa Margarita out in Southern California. Nicole Russo's pedigree pick segment focuses on some 3-year-olds running on the synthetic surface at Turfway. JK's play of the day, he's got an Oaklawn Park pick 3. David Aragona's Timeform US Spotlight focuses on the Rebel. We'll also have Peter Thomas Fornatel's Tournament Talk, horses to watch, best bets, and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate, presented by Turfway Park, with our Horse Watch segment. Mike Beer, NYRA analyst, you saw something down at Gulfstream that happens as often as Haley's Comet, a Michael Matz debut winner.
Yeah, first-time starter for Michael Matz. Caught this race on Sunday almost by accident. The horse's name is Lolly Bella. She's a first-time starter for Michael Matz, making her debut, going 9 furlongs on the turf. And we can pick up the replay here. She didn't break that great from the gate. She's the 7, down on the rail, back of the pack. And you can see Luis Saez is going to try and work his way forward here up the backstretch. This run that he's trying to make up the rail is going to take him absolutely nowhere, and he's going to get shuffled all the way back out to last again before they hit the far turn. From here, I think it's fair not to maybe expect too much from this filly who's just making her debut. But watch the run that Saez puts her into here through the second turn. He's just going to take her to the outside, and he's going to slingshot around this field. I mean, he's almost going to wind up in the parking lot as they turn into the stretch in this race, all the way around the outside, but she keeps her momentum going, and she'll actually continue this run all the way through the stretch to get up. She was a huge price in this race, but boy, she sure didn't look like a 30-to-1 shot making this kind of a run after that kind of a trip.
So shuffled entering the far turn, taken to the far outside, 6-7 wide in the stretch, professional and straight and strong in the lane, solid by her speed figure, and she did it all at 1 1/8. This looks like perhaps a stakes horse in the making for trainer Michael Matz. Matt Bernier, returning from a successful trip to Tampa Bay Downs on Tampa Bay Derby Day, you found something on the undercard.
Well, I just think this is a horse that you're thinking long-term here. We're going to go take a look at the debut of a horse called My Dream for Shug McGahee, homebred for the Phipps family. You're going to take a look at the top portion of this replay. It's the head-on section, down to the inside. He's the number 1. He's going to get body slammed pretty hard out of there, guys. Goes down probably 3 or 4 pads at that point. The thing going forward, though, he didn't really do a heck of a lot of running in the replay itself. The big piece for me, his dam is a half to imagining, who we know is a grade 1 router on turf. He's by Orb, and I think ultimately the Orbs are going to be turf horses. This was 7/8 on the main track. There's a part of me that thinks this was nothing more than a starting off point, a means to an end. Maybe you can catch him at a decent number if they do eventually transition him over going long on the turf. Again, he didn't do any running in that race really, but considering the start and the pedigree, I'm hopeful to get him going long on the turf at some point.
And he also caught a very promising first-time starter from the Todd Pletcher barn as well, and that's my horse watch, Ruler of the Nile. Let's pick it up, turning into the stretch. This horse, no secret, 3-10 for the 7-furlong debut, stalked the pace on the outside under John Velasquez and drops the hammer and wrote to a 83 buyer win. This horse, by Pioneer of the Nile, sold for $240,000 as a weanling, then went for $1 million at OBS March last year. The dam's a half to Cairo Prince, a multiple graded stakes winner, Nona Mia, a grade 1 placed runner. And if you watch the Clocker report on DRF.com, you'd have found out that Ruler of the Nile had been working in company with a Pletcher 3-year-old named Autostrade. Ruler of the Nile won with the 83 buyer on Saturday. Autostrade came right back and won first time out and looks like a promising sprinter on Sunday for Pletcher. I'm really curious to see where Todd runs this expensive 3-year-old next. The urge, of course, is to stretch him out, but boy, he's way behind the 8 ball in terms of seasoning as it pertains to the Spring Classics. But keep an eye out on Ruler of the Nile. Let's get to some handicapping. Lots of great 3-year-old stakes races this Saturday. Let's take a look at the field for Saturday's DRF Bets Race of the Day. It's the Grade 2 $900,000 Rebel Stakes for 3-year-olds going 1 1/16. It's Oaklawn race number 10. You can access free Formulator Pass performances for the Rebel on the Race of the Day event page at drf.com. You can also access all of the graded stakes video previews at video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. We're expanded. We go every horse in every race. They'll be up by Friday afternoon at the very latest. Gents, the story of this race is the 3-year-old debut of Solomini. He is 3-2 on the morning line for Bob Baffert, who has an awesome record lifetime at Oaklawn. We'll get to him in a minute. You guys are shopping for prices. Matt, you're looking for a big bomb.
Yeah, I think Higher Power is an interesting runner in here. He's far from the likeliest winner, but I think there's some positive things to take from this horse. We're going to go back and take a look at his 3-year-old debut at Oaklawn Park. You see him on the outside right now, coming up in those familiar silks that we see from Pin Oak. He's going to come on with a serious run. I like the way that he finishes in here. He's got a nice pedigree. He's by Medaglia d'Oro, and he's related to a couple of nice runners, including Alternation and Interrupted, a couple of graded stakes winners. I don't know. I just think there's a scenario where maybe this horse is slowly putting it together. Again, far from the likeliest winner. But if you're looking for an alternative to the big boys in here, perhaps it's him.
Kind of like the way he kicked down his last 2 races, despite the fact that there really wasn't a lot of pace. And from a pedigree standpoint, purely the sky is the limit. He also has a nice tactical gear. Mike, you're looking at the local prep race for the Rebel. That's the Southwest. There was a perfect trip winner. Yeah. Your top selection in the Rebel didn't have a perfect trip.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Combatant had a perfect trip in the Southwest. That's for sure. I mean, this is a horse. I don't think he's one of the top 3-year-olds in the country right now, but I do think he's pretty good. He's tried 3 stakes races since he broke his maiden at the end of last year. He's finished second in all 3 of them, but I also feel like he's run really well in all 3 of them. We can look at the Southwest now. This was a muddy sealed track. The winner's going to come right through on the inside. We pick it up on the stretch, and there's Combatant on the outside trying to close. A couple other horses who are back in this spot also in this race. Combatant came around to the outside for the stretch in this race, came 4-5 wide. I liked the way that he finished up in this race, though, even though the winner gets away from him at the end. I also liked his race 2 starts back in the Smarty Jones, where Marino, the ill-fated Marino for Baffert, sort of controlled that pace. I loved the way this horse chased him home with a pretty solid figure in that race. I'm going to give him one more chance. I don't love post 10. I'm going to give him one more chance in here at a price, though.
I think he has enough tactical speed to extricate himself from that outside post and find himself in a decent spot, second flight or so away from any traffic. We'll see how far he wants to go. We'll see how good he is, because the horse that's going to have to beat, the horse they're all going to have to beat, is the returning Solomini. Let's go back to his 2-year-old finale. That was the controversial Los Al Futurity. They turn into the stretch, and there are some good horses inside of him. That's McKinsey down towards the rail. Instilled Regard in between. Those two have gone on to do some really good things at 3. Solomini on the outside, 1 start removed after a runner-up effort in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Looks like he's got all the momentum right now on the outside, but once he gets hit with this right-handed whip in a second, he is going to drift in, bother Instilled Regard just a little bit. Solomini hops back to his left lead, but he still stays on his business, and he goes on to win the race, only to be disqualified and placed 3rd from a steward's standpoint. His last 3 Beyer speed figures better than any of the last figures earned for anybody else in this field, and those figures were earned as a 2-year-old. Not a lot of value. 3-2 on the morning line for Solomini, but he is way the horse to beat. If you're looking for a little bit of value to spice up your exotics, maybe consider the number 1 Title Ready, who really improved with blinkers for Steve Asmussen last time out and draws a cozy inside post position. Before we go to break, we've got 2 really good segments that you need to see. Nicole Russo's pedigree pick focuses on some 3-year-olds at Turfway Park on Saturday. Peter Thomas Fornatel's Tournament Talk segment gives you all the latest news and notes on the tournament world. Then come back after the break. Lots more handicapping on Out of the Gate, presented by Turfway Park.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky for Out of the Gate. Heading up to Florence on Saturday, Turfway Park's biggest day of the year, with 5 stakes highlighted by the track's Kentucky Derby, the Jeff Ruby Stakes. And I want to highlight a very well-bred horse here who has not yet run on a synthetic track, and talk about how he might adapt pedigree-wise. That's Ride a Comet. Coming off a turf allowance win last out at the fairgrounds, he is a half-brother to Belmont Stakes winner Taprit, so we certainly know that this family can go a distance. Ride a Comet gets some versatility in his pedigree from Candy Ride, a winner on both dirt and turf who has become an outstanding multi-purpose sire. In addition to dirt Grade 1 winners like, of course, Horse of the Year Gun Runner, he's got several Grade 1 winners on turf, including Ascend just last year. And more importantly, his champion Shared Belief and his other son Misremembered, both Grade 1 winners routing on synthetic. Trader Mark Cassie points out that Ride a Comet was purchased out of the OBS 2-year sales last year. The breed show for that is on a synthetic track. Cassie said, quote, that the colt seemed to love it. Now let's take a quick look at the field for the Rushaway Stakes, also for 3-year-olds on the Ruby undercard. Do you believe in royalty? This colt has been well beaten in his 2 stakes tries, but also sports just an outstanding pedigree by perennial leading sire Tappet and out of Kentucky Oaks winner Believe You Can. Now, Tappet's progeny do run on everything. He's got turf Grade 1 winners like Ring Weekend and Tappett's Fly on his resume. More importantly, his synthetic standouts include champion Stardom Bound and champion Hanson, who loves Turfway. You're watching Believe in Royalty powering down the stretch in a Laurel Park race. You can see he's a little bit green there, maybe looking around a little bit, but just a really talented colt who's obviously been highly thought of with that outstanding pedigree, trained by Larry Jones, who trained his dam, as I said, well beaten in his 2 stakes tries, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him pick up some black type here on this track. I'll be at Turfway on Saturday with colleagues Byron King and Joe Nevels. Make sure to follow along on DRF Live and on social media. For now, though, let's get you over to Peter Thomas Fornatale for some tournament talk.
Peter Thomas Fornatale back with you on Out of the Gate. A little bit of a departure this week for my Out of the Gate segment. I'm not going to be talking to you about tournaments, though you can read plenty about them under the news drop down at tournaments.drf.com. Lots of stuff going on in the contest world last weekend. But I'm here today to talk about a racing festival. Some would say the world's premier racing festival. It's the Cheltenham Festival. Fans of jump racing around the world convene in the Cotswolds, where I am right now, to watch 4 days of championship-level racing. The excitement is intense. People wait all year for this. Christmas and the Super Bowl and the World Series rolled into one if you're a National Hunt fan. It also takes on a bit of an Olympic flair. I can remember walking by one of the pubs in nearby Pressbury, my first time here at the festival 15 years ago, and just seeing a chalkboard out front where it would normally list the football matches, etc., and just having the word horse racing, Great Britain versus Ireland written on the board. And that's kind of what it's like. You have major yards from both the UK and Ireland competing in this top-level racing. You get tens of thousands of people coming over from Ireland and a handful of us coming over from the United States, including myself and our colleague Steve Anderson, who's doing a great job covering the races for Daily Racing Form. You can read his material, drf.com, and on DRF Live if you want to follow along and get a little bit of the flavor. I come to you today from the apartment, which is less than 50 yards from the racecourse, of one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today. No, it's not Rob Dove. It's Dan Hardcore. Dan, kind enough to take me in and allow me to experience Cheltenham once again. If you're a racing fan, put this item on your bucket list. It's very different. You don't have a lot in terms of DRF-style past performances. You're going to be looking at various websites and coming up with information and listening to podcasts like my friends over at the Final Furlong podcast to get a sense of who you should be betting. But for the opportunity to come here, to see the excitement, to meet new friends, to go into the bookie ring and see how that works and how that differs from the parimutuel system, to maybe sneak your way into some hospitality, as I was able to do yesterday with our friends in the Betfair tent. It is an experience, the Cheltenham Festival, that a racing fan will remember, and many of us, like myself, will vow to come back year after year. I got introduced to Cheltenham through my friend Sean Clancy, who runs the This Is Horse Racing website, along with his brother Joe. when he had me come over here 15 years ago. Liked it so much, came back the very next year to watch Best Mate, one of my favorites of all time, win his third Cheltenham Gold Cup. That's the big race on Friday. My wife Susan and I actually got engaged that night. It's a place where, for me, not just great sporting memories, but great life memories here at the Cheltenham Festival. And, of course, there's drinking involved, so that's kind of fun, too. Folks should check it out and check out my work about tournaments in the pages of Daily Racing Form, also tournaments.drf.com. You can also catch me on the DRF Players podcast. That's all I have for this week. We'll get back to the tourneys next time. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. There'll be more Out of the Gate right after this.
Let's take a look at the field for another Kentucky Derby qualifying points race. This one at Turfway Park. It is the Grade 3 $200,000 Jeff Ruby Stakes at 1 1/8 over the Polytrack surface. For expanded stakes previews of the Jeff Ruby Stakes and all of the other graded stakes all weekend long, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. There's not a coupled entry in this race, but I guess if there was, would it be one an A1?
I like that.
I guess it would be something like that. Keep going. The folks have to watch the expanded stakes previews, because I have to admit, I really was on fire there. The point being, of course, is we got to try to pick the winner of this race. And Mike, you got a horse that's never raced on synthetic, but was really, really good last time out at Delta Downs for a really, really good trainer. Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm taking a little bit of a shot here with the number 10 Zanesville. I was covered in confusion, Illman, when I was handicapping this race. I think a lot of different horses can win. Here's what I like about Zanesville. We can put the replay up of his most recent start. He's 2 for 3 since they stretched him out around 2 turns. This is his last race. He got a good trip in here, but he wins very easily. He goes for a very good trainer. He projects for a good trip in this race. There should be some pace for him to run at. And I like that Tom Amos shipped him into Turfway, worked him a couple times over the synthetic just to see what would happen. It looks like he worked pretty well over this surface. He's got a little pedigree on the dam side. His dam is a sister to Stardom Bound, who was a really, really good synthetic horse back in the day when California was running on synthetic surfaces. I'm just hoping that this horse at a price has some things going for him, can get a trip, and can pull off a little bit of an upset.
Our friend, the legendary Harvey Pack, said that Oscar Barrera said that the reason his horses improved so much was because when he claimed them, they were covered in confusion. Matt, you're not covered in confusion in this race. It's a very logical angle. It's Maker in the big race at Turfway.
Yeah, I was going to say, in Maker I trust over this kind of surface. Cash Call Kitten, he may not be the fastest horse in the world, but the good news is I don't think any of these horses are fast right now. So maybe he can take enough of a step forward. We're going to go back and take a look at his most recent start. This was a stakes race down at Gulfstream Park on the turf. You see him already on the front end. He's going to be a little bit late with the lead change, but then he's going to go right back to his left lead. You see him, he's all washed out on his neck. The important thing to think about with this horse, the way I'm looking at him anyway, is I think he's going to appreciate distance. His career debut at a mile, he galloped out like a monster. In this race, he galloped out really, really well. You notice as well, if you've got those if you go into Formulator, you can add all of the lifetime workouts. He also was at Turfway Park before his career debut. So I have a feeling that they've already seen that he can get over the surface a little bit. He's no superstar, I don't think anyway, but he doesn't have to be a superstar to win this race. And I think the 1 1/8, that could be a difference maker. I like him in here.
I want a horse that's run on synthetic. I want a horse that's stretch run at Turfway Park. The local prep for the Jeff Ruby Stakes is the Battaglia Memorial run on February the 23rd, won by Magical Meister. Several horses coming out of the Battaglia, back for more on Saturday. Let's take a look at that stretch run. I thought the Battaglia was a race that fell apart from a pace scenario. Sky Promise, as you see right there, coming from way in the back. Arawak had already made a run. Magical Meister stayed within range of this fast pace, then got the jump on the speeds turning into the stretch, and he had just enough to hold off Sky Promise. It was a very promising performance for Magical Meister, who now is going to have to stretch out another 1/16 of a mile. But when you look back in this pedigree, there are some stout turf influences. I like Magical Meister's tactical speed. I like that he's won on the track. I like that he's 12-1 on the morning line. I'm hoping he gets another solid pace that he can stalk and maybe get the jump on some of these closers in the lane. That's the number 5, Magical Meister in the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Now let's head out to Southern California for the only Grade 1 stakes race this weekend. It is the Unique Bella Less Santa Margarita. Now we're heading out to the Great Race Place on Out of the Gate for the Grade 1 Santa Margarita Stakes. Let's take a look at this field. Unique Bella came down with a little bit of a cough, a little bit of a hiccup in her training. She's not going to be here, and all of a sudden the Santa Margarita becomes a really intriguing betting race. For expanded stakes previews, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. One of the fascinating entrants in this race is on the outside. That is the number 10, Fault. That Keeneland graduate is 4-1 on the morning line. Mike Beer, you scored out on this one last time out on the turf. Can she step on dirt?
I guess it's a pretty big question for her. I mean, she's a little bit different in that regard to some of the other horses we see trying to make the surface, which if only because she's run on dirt before. It was very early in her career. She's a better horse now than she was then, but she did win on dirt in her second career start, muddy sealed track or not. I guess it sort of suggests that she'll be okay with this surface switch. She's still not really my kind of horse, making this kind of a surface switch, especially with no Unique Bella. She's probably a relatively short price in this race, but I'm not going to be surprised when she's just better than these horses, guys.
Key for her might be the distance. Let's watch her most recent start on the turf. She's down towards the inside. She really got a great trip and a patient ride. She's going to shoot on through along the inside and finish up really well. She was compromised by some tough trips last year on the turf, but the 1 1/8 really is right up of Fault's alley, and if she runs in this spot, she's going to be tough. But she's also been cross-entered in Sunday's graded stakes race on the turf, where she might go off a fairly strong favorite. Matt and I'll have that expanded stakes preview on video.drf.com tomorrow afternoon. Matt, one of your old-time faves is in here, and it looks like she's got a great spot. It's your girl Mopetism.
I mean, I guess if you're going to get a Grade 1, this is the opportunity to do it. Mopetism, the thing I love most about her, she just shows up and runs her race. Sometimes it's good enough to win, sometimes it's not. Without Unique Bella, perhaps this is the spot. We're going to go 2 starts back right now to the La Cañada when she won over a couple of common foes in this spot. I just love how game she is. She goes out there. She's going to run probably a low, maybe a mid-90. If she can get to a 95 like she did in her most recent run in the Santa Maria against Unique Bella, I think that's probably just good enough to win in here, guys.
Yeah, I agree with Matt in this race. I took a long look at this field. I just feel like this might be the right spot for Mopetism to finally get a Grade 1. I thought that she ran well in that replay that we just showed. And to me, she was just, in a race where I just don't really like anybody, she's the most reliable horse in the field, and she's going to get another good trip in this race.
She has a good stalking ability, and there's some speed in here with Bishop's Pond, Shipping West for Jason Service, and Mended, the mare we just saw Mopetism run down in the La Cañada. I kind of like Mended a little bit in here. It's pretty easy to see why when we take a look at her past performances. This is what's known as a lot of ones. She was claimed for $12,500 on January the 6th, 2017, and all she did after that was win 10 races in a row before Mopetism snapped that streak just in the shadow of the wire in the La Cañada. If I'm the jock here, I'm not worried about Bishop's Pond. I'm sending. I'm not going to try to take this mare out of her comfort zone. The concern, of course, is the presence of other speeds and the 1 1/8. But as you saw when Mopetism came to this horse in the lane, this horse has a lot of fight, and if somehow Bishop's Pond leaves her alone, she's going to be a price, and she's going to be in control of things turning into the stretch. I'll look for a little bit of a price with the number 3, Mended, at 6-1 in the Grade 1 Santa Margarita. JK's got a pick 3 play of the day at Oaklawn. David Aragona's Time Form US Spotlight focuses on the DRF Bets Formulator Race of the Day, the Rebel. Let's go to those segments right now.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to JK's Play of the Day. I'm going to play a pick 3 at Oaklawn. All stakes pick 3 starting in race number 8, the $300,000 Essex. In this spot, my top pick is going to be the 7, Leofric. The horse was on the outside on a day that didn't really want to be there. I'm a little bit nervous about whether or not he liked the mud, and that was the reason that he ran so well. But the race 2 back, the allowance race at Oaklawn was good enough. And I think that what he did in the Razorback makes me think that he's going to run really well here. Will come from off the pace. Time form suggests that horses on or near are going to be at an disadvantageous place with the pace being a little bit quicker. So Leofric's my top pick. My other 2 horses I'm going to use are Hedge Fund. I thought Hedge Fund ran really well at Gulfstream last time with a 125 figure wire to wire. Could get to the inside and could be tough from going 2 turns at Oaklawn on or near the lead, even if they don't go too quick. And then also I'm going to use Untrapped a little bit. Untrapped was a Derby horse last year. Steve Asmussen obviously does really well at Oaklawn Park. I think this horse could pick up the pieces if, for whatever reason, Leofric and or Hedge Fund don't fire. So for the 8th race, I'm going to use the 2, the 4, and the 7. On to race 9, the Azeri, a prep for the Grade 1 Apple Blossom coming up in the next couple of months. There's a horse in here I'm going to use that I'm not high on. There's 2 horses I'm not high on for certain reasons, and there is one that I am high on. The one Actress I do think will run really well. Jason Service obviously has my attention as his abilities as a trainer. Actress has kind of beaten me in a couple situations where I didn't think that she would run well, and she did. I'm going to use Actress. I'm going to use Streamline as well. The horse has been kind of getting setups, closing into quick paces. I think she'll get a quick pace in here again today. She should be a good price. Hall of Fame rider Gary Stevens should be able to find a way to get into that pace. And then Blue Prize is the one that I want to be against, but the talent is too much. Feels like a prep for the Apple Blossom, but I do feel like this horse could still get it done. Drawn on the outside, is going to be able to see everything that happens inside of her. I'm against Farrell and Terra Promesa. Both of those fillies really excel when they can kind of be on the front end and have things their own way. Well, they're both in this race. I think that they're going to ding-dong, and they're not going to like what happens when they have to look another horse in the eye or another filly and mare in the eye. I'm going to use those other horses in this spot. And then on to the Rebel. I like 2 horses here. I'm completely against Solomini. Solomini has quickly become the 3rd or 4th best horse in Bob Baffert's barn as far as 3-year-olds. I'm going to use the 10 Combatant. I've been waiting for him to run back since his race in the Southwest where he was on the outside when the inside was exactly where he wanted to be. I thought he ran really well, and I thought that 30 seconds after the race was over. And then Sporting Chance, another one that I think could improve second off of a layoff, was coming into the Southwest off a 168-day break since the Grade 1 hopeful where he ran really well, and I think that he'll run well in this spot as well. I'm just going to use the 7 Sporting Chance and the 10 Combatant and hope that Solomini can't get it done. Good luck. We'll see you next week.
Hi, this is Argona with this week's Time Formula Spotlight. We're going to be taking a look at the Rebel Stakes at Oaklawn Park on Saturday. This race features a field of 11 3-year-olds, and it's headed by the morning line favorite Solomini. He was one of the top 2-year-olds of last year. He was, of course, second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile behind Good Magic, finishing ahead of Bolt Doro that day. He returned to win the Los Alamitos Futurity in a Grade 1 race before getting disqualified. He's the horse in this spot, but he faces a field of 10 rivals and a lot of pretty solid horses with pedigrees to go the distance that seem like they're up-and-comers that could make a splash on the Derby Trail. Let's take a look at the Time Form US pace to see how the pace of this race is going to shape up. We're predicting a fast pace in this race. It's going to be set by Sporting Chance in all likelihood, but there are a bunch of speed horses to the inside that could give him some trouble. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the riders play this race tactically, because some of the horses to the inside are out in distance or have only tried route a few times. Even a horse like he's projected to be up close to the pace, and he's not really a speed type. So I could see the pace going a few different ways. Spring Chance does seem like one that will be from his outside post position, though. We'll start the conversation with Solomini because he just is forced to beat in this race. He's the likely favorite. Looking at his time form speed figures, all from last year, there's just some of the fastest numbers in the race. He earned that 120, finishing behind Bolt Doro in a very fast edition of back in September. Then he followed up with a solid effort in the Breeders' Cup. The Los Al Future earned a very high 123 time from a speed figure, which, as we mentioned, he won that day but was disqualified to third after interfering with McKinsey a stretch of that race. He's just a real grinding sort who typically runs his race. He's always, up close in the mix throughout. He's the horse that usually needs a lot of encouragement, to stay in the game, but he seems to keep grinding it out. He is coming off a layoff coming into this race, though, and you see Bob Baffert off layoffs 73 to 103 days, just gets a 68 trainer rating for a trainer like Bob Baffert, who just has excellent statistics across the board. He gets a 100 trainer rating overall from Time US. That 68 is a bit of a concern. So I feel like Solomini's a horse you have to use, maybe one to play against at a short price. Magnum Moon is the other horse that's going to be taking a lot of money in this race. He's 7-2 on the morning line. I could see him dipping lower than that because these Todd Pletcher horses just seem to take a lot of money. He's undefeated coming into this race, really untested. He won his debut going 6 furlongs in Gulfstream, earned a 1:15 time formula speed figure, which puts him right in the mix against Stakes Company. Followed it up with an easier race at Tampa, just trying 2 turns for the first time to get some experience going around the 2 bends. And he passed the test with flying colors. They put him behind horses in the early going so he could take some dirt in his face. You see the blue color-coded pace figures indicate that the pace was pretty slow, so he had to run a little bit at the end of the race to get past those horses. But Louis Saez just had, a hammerlock on him early, really very little encouragement from the stretch that day. So seems like a horse that has the right to take a step forward, and he's already running speed figures that put him right in the mix here. So I think he's very dangerous in this race. It's just I doubt we're going to get much of a price on him, so I'll use him along with Solomini. But I'm interested in some horses that are going to be slightly higher prices. Sporting Chance, the likely pace setter in this race, is a horse that really interests me. There are a few horses coming out of the Southwest Stakes run last month. That day, the track was muddy, it was sealed, and watching the races throughout the day, especially late in the card, you could tell that the rail was really where you wanted to be. We saw horses sneaking up the rail in both of the 2-turn stakes races at the end of the day. Just horses with inside positions that had a big advantage. Now, that gave my boy Jack, the winner of that race, he got the best grip and gave him a big advantage, saving ground on the rail. The horse that was most against the track that day was Combatant, who was about 3 and 4 wide throughout. Sporting Chance was also on the rail for a lot of that race, angled out in the stretch and kind of got slammed when Combatant ran into him at the quarter pole. From there, I thought he stayed on well to finish third, but considering the circumstances for Sporting Chance, coming back off a layoff after not racing since the Hopeful last year in September of his 2-year-old season, back then he had run a 1:07 time formula speed figure, which is slower than some others in here, but that was the summer of his 2-year-old year, so he has a right to improve since then. I thought he showed enough in that Southwest to suggest that he has improved as a 3-year-old and he could take a step forward today. I like that he's drawn outside of all the other speed horses so he can either stalk right outside of them, or if some of them get a little tentative about the stretching out in distance and don't show the speed they did in shorter races, maybe he can control the pace. So I think Sporting Chance is very dangerous in here, and I expect him to improve off his Southwest effort. One other horse to take a look at a bigger price is Title Ready, the number 1 horse in this race. He's moving up Stakes Company for the first time after winning a nominators 1 allowance race at Oaklawn Park last time. I just really liked the way he won that race. He earned a fast speed figure of 1:11, beat a few horses that came back to run next time, the 3rd and 4th place finishers who actually exactly repeated the time formula speed figures they earned in that prior race. So it really validates the strength of that speed figure. He's a horse with a ton of pedigree to go along. He's a half to seeking the title and perfect title, both stakes winning and stakes place routers. And I liked the way he finished off that race. I like his inside rail position. He should be able to get a good stalking trip, or maybe be on the lead, depending how the others outside of him play the break. Just feels like one that's going to get a good trip and could get a little lost in the shuffle here. So I like Sporting Chance. I'll use him with the 2 logical horses, Solomini and Magnum Moon, and a little Title Ready. Let's send it back to the studio.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate, presented by Turfway Park. Time for our Best Bets segment. Mike Beer, you've got something at Oaklawn coming off a true prep.
Yeah, Oaklawn race number 8's the Essex handicap at 1 1/16 that kicks off the stakes action there. I'm going to take a shot with Multiplier in this race. He's got post 11, and he's one of those horses who doesn't have that much early speed, but there's pace in this race. I feel like he could pull the right trip in this race. A horse who I thought was a pretty progressive 3-year-old before they threw him into the Preakness and Belmont Stakes and things went a little bit wrong for him. Here's his first start back as a 4-year-old this year. Sloppy track sprinting at Santa Anita. They just took him back to last in this race. I really feel like they were just prepping him for a longer race in here. You can see him now angling to the outside. He's actually going to run at the end of this race. I think this kind of race race first off the layoff can really set this horse up to stretch back out in distance for this race, and I'm hoping he takes a step forward here.
Connection said as much before that race, that this was a prep to get to the Essex. They had to be very pleased with the way he was finishing up late. He's getting the distance he wants. Matt, you're also looking at something at Oaklawn on the undercard in the Azeri.
Yeah, the very next race, number 9, it's the prep for the Apple Blossom coming up next month. I've been waiting for Sandy Surprise to come back to the race. I think you can make an excuse for each of the past 2 starts. 2 starts back, hung wide in the La Cañada. We talked about that. I felt like he needed to be toward the side. Most recently, though, this is the Houston class, so we're going to look at that right now. She's making the front right now. And this was a race that just completely, the pace doesn't look that fast, but it came apart where anybody that made the front was forwardly placed. They finished up the track. The fact that she made the first move, last move was the winning move. You see Tiger Moth coming on the outside. They ran a tremendous race here. All worth noting, Martini Glass, who she'll run into Saturday, all she did was come back to win next out in the world down at Gulfstream Park. So far, this race has come back to be pretty live, and I think Sandy Surprise has a big chance in here. I think she's completely lost in the shuffle, and I've been, like I said, licking my chops, waiting for her to come back. This is the spot.
12-1 on the morning line for Sandy's Surprise in the Azeri. Lots of great stakes racing all across the country. Several stakes races at Laurel on Saturday. I'm taking a look at race number 9. My top pick in here, the Not for Love Stakes, is the number 2, Louisfield. You've got some familiar names in here. It's The Journey, John Jones, Struth, Louisfield. This will only be start number 7. He's got all the upside. Let's go back to his most recent start, where his connections dropped him into an optional claiming non-winners at 2 other than. He shot on through along the inside entering the turn, took over the lead, and once the jock asks him for a run, just look at him extend, and he'll complete 6 furlongs in 1:08 and 4 for a 95 Beyer speed figure. He draws inside of Struth again, and that was the situation that contributed to Struth beating Louisfield 2 starts back in the Bender Memorial, but that race was run in a driving snowstorm, and I still think that Louisfield has got a lot more upside than Struth. It's The Journey coming off a good effort in the De Francis. He could easily win this race if he runs, but I have a feeling he's going to take some money. I'll go with Louisfield, race number 9, number 2, the Not for Love Stakes at Laurel on Saturday. We thank Turfway for sponsoring Out of the Gate this week. We thank you for watching, and just remember, you can access the latest DRF TV offerings on Twitter. Just head on over to @DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Form, follow @DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.